Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Welcome to Connect Africa. We are here once again with Kwame Gonza to give you and to analyze what's happening in the continent. We apologize, we are a bit late, but I hope you will bear with us. So for today, our topic is what's happening in South Africa, the DS party being part of the GNU, the government of the national unity, and having all those strategic positions. But when we talk about the white man or this minority party taking power in a black man's land in South Africa, we did not want also to alienate or to leave our people in the United States, the African Americans. So that will give us a better understanding, or a broader, let me say, a broader understanding of the situation. So thank you, Kwame, really for bringing this up. Let me welcome you. Welcome, Kwame, and we'll get to the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mahlet. And indeed, you compared it very well. Yeah, it is just timely that when we are talking about the Democratic Alliance of South Africa and how it was able to push itself, squeeze itself, or strategically find its way into the national unity government in South Africa, that we should be able to look at our brothers. I think that was a very good comparison which you did there, because our brothers who are Africans in the United States, or whatever you want, or what other people want, they may call them African Americans, they may call them Black Americans, but these are Africans definitely. So we want to look at their predicament in the United States. Okay, so that is what today we want to look at and compare. Is it really fair? What are the mistakes? What are there strategic mistakes that have been made by maybe our brothers in the United States, the so-called African Americans, or is not about strategic mistake. There's no strategic mistake which was made, but there is forces which are much more stronger than we think. So these are the things which we want to deliberate on. Of course, as Mahlet has mentioned, the government, the cabinet, President Ramaphosa, announced the cabinet, and the Democratic Alliance was able to achieve 6 posts in the whole national unity government, even though the whites in South Africa constitute only about 8.2%, but they seem to have found themselves in government with a representation of up to 19%. 19%. People who constitute only 8.2% in South Africa. The whites constitute, of the total population, they constitute only 8.2%. But if you look at the positions they took, six
Just
out
to
of
be
30.
clear, it's not 12% of the population. I hear recently.
No, they are 8.2%. They're just 8.2%, the white in South Africa. And they were able to achieve 19, representation on the cabinet at 19%. So it shows you an oversized representation, on the cabinet. So these are the things. But when you look at the United States itself, also, we want to look at it, our people represented in the same way. Yeah. So back to you, Mallet.
Good then. Yeah, thank you very much, Kwame. Definitely. It's not only to talk about what's happening in the continent, but what's happening to our people. How do we now, what happened here, how does it help us to reflect on ourselves and move forward? What are the commonalities there? Identifying those will be really the important part for us. Now, before we start, we really want to kind of, I like to say in a research, to frame it so that with that background, with that information, then we will be able to discuss what we have planned to discuss here, because it's really important for us. Now, in the just concluded and power sharing arrangements in South Africa, which it's called the government of national unity. Now, the White Man's Democratic Alliance, or DA as it is called in its acronym name, managed to get 6 cabinet ministerial seats out of 32, which represents 19% of the government. Now, this shows progress for them, really, because it's almost 1/5 of the government. That's big. Now, on the other side, in the United States, we have African Americans or Africans in America. It's always a dispute, how to name this. Now, they are sprinkled here and there in American government without really any serious political representation or political base in the country, in the United States. Now, is this a cause for concern, and have the African Americans or attempted at one point or another to build a political base, as we see in South Africa, like DA, the White Man's Party? Now, I'm gonna leave you to reminisce on that, and we go ahead with our questions and see if that is answered for you. Now, allow me, Kwame, now with this, I go ahead with my first question. So now, can you please compare and contrast the two groups in these countries, in South Africa and the United States? Like we have the White Man's Party, the DA party in South Africa, which is a remnant of the apartheid, succeeding in South Africa. Now, yet in the United States, the Africans or the African Americans who are formerly, oppressed and who were freedom fighter and also contributors, they did not succeed politically to the point of sharing power like the DA did now. Now, can you compare the two? Is it a difference in a strategy? What is it missing?
Thank you very much, Mahlet, and thank you for that introduction. And that's why you asked a question: have the African Americans or the Africans in the United States attempted to build themselves a political base, and of course even an economic base, for that matter? And this topic today, I think, is very important to us as an African people, because we need to understand and connect the dots. We have to connect the dots internationally for us to understand what is our position on the global international stage. All right. Because our predicament here on the continent is not really very different from that of the African Americans or the Africans in the United States or the Africans in America, depending on how people want to call it, or others, they can say, Black Americans, whatever it is. That doesn't matter. The fact remains that these are people of African descent. Now, to compare between the two groups, as we have seen, actually, the figure of whites in South Africa, we were even overestimating it. But data from, if you look at the simplest place or the easiest place where you can get this data is Wikipedia. The population, even when you go to the website on South African government website, you see that the whites constitute just 7.3%. 7.3% of the total population of the country. Now, the African Americans or the Africans in the United States, on the other hand, constitute 13% of the population. All right. Now, in South Africa, these whites who are just 7.3%, they control the land. They control the land at almost 72%. They control 72% of the land, the factories, the mines, and everything that is in it. All right. So they have not only now a political base, but for a very long time they have had an economic base. And on the other hand, also what we see is that of course they have support from outside. They have huge support from outside, from Europe and the United States. As you saw that during the period when Zimbabwe attempted to take back the land, the few whites in the country who owned the majority of the land in Zimbabwe, the United States punished Zimbabwe because it was taking back the land from the whites. And of course, this is very unfortunate. So what is happening in the country, in South Africa, shows you that these people have been gaining ground more and more, and they have been strategizing. They have been strategizing this for a very long time to gain an upper hand in South African politics. And they have been using money, okay? They have been using the help which they have from their brothers who are whites in the United States and Europe to not only intimidate the ANC, but also to weaken it. And when you listen to the strategist, who is Helen Izele of the Democratic Alliance, they have been blatantly pointing out the economic freedom fighters of Julius Malema as the greatest enemy. That is their greatest enemy. And if you ask why is it their greatest enemy, it is because the EFF says that it has to take back the land and take back the mines and nationalize all the resources so that they can benefit all the country. So as we have seen in one of the viral videos which is going across from the new supposed minister of Home Affairs, who says that he's going to deport all the blacks, who is a white man from Netherlands. These whites are from Netherlands. Most of them are from Netherlands, actually. What they want is what the other white people want, like what you are seeing even in Europe, is to have sole ownership and control of the resources of the country and oppress the rest. So it's the same thing which they were, practicing during apartheid and colonialism during those periods. So the predicament of our brothers in the United States continues to be, a difficult one. They have representation here and there, in the government. But even those blacks who are in government today, on the side of the African Americans, they really don't represent the interests of their people. So they are chosen and given these responsibilities. But these responsibilities which they carry out, you see that in one way or another, these responsibilities they are carrying out, they actually push their people further down. You look at people like Linda Thomas, for example, who is the representative of the United States at the United Nations. So what is she really contributing to the African American community, apart from serving, the United States and its oppressive activities across the globe? You look at people like the General Langley, who's a black man, is a pure black man, okay? He's leading AFRICOM, the so-called United States Africa Command, in oppressing other black people across the continent, not contributing to the black community in the United States. Apart from these gestures being just symbolic, these black figures who are elected or appointed in the United States government, or who find their way into positions of power in the United States, they are not contributing, anything substantial to the black community or the African American community in the United States. So they are there in the government, whether in the Biden administration, you can talk of the Vice President Kamala Harris. They are there only to continue to push the agenda of the white people, across the globe and within even the United States itself. On the other hand, in South Africa, you see that the white man, immediately when he came to power, you are seeing the minister of internal affairs, immediately his words was to deport the blacks. Whether you are coming from Congo, you are coming from Mozambique, they are going to deport you. He has not talked about deporting any whites who are coming from Europe. He has not spoken about anything like that, or deporting Indians or what. He has said he wants to deport the blacks. You see, so you can see the difference. The difference is huge, but also it shows as a matter of continuing this comparison, it shows a lack of strategic thinking on the side of the Africans, that organizations like the ANC has not thought strategically. And of course, we have made a lot of analysis on the African National Congress and how it moved, and the fact that the people who left the ANC, who did not vote for it, went to the MK party and went to the EFF in the past. Instead of the ANC looking for those people where they have gone, it decided to go in the opposite direction. So I think that this is a strategic mistake. This is a strategic mistake. And of course, we have done extensive analysis on that. And you can see that the more you concede to imperialism, the more it demands. Today, I think some data came out, some article, I saw some article whereby the United States has put sanctions on South Africa, that South Africa allowed the Chinese pilots to be trained on South African soil. So it has put some sanctions on South Africa. So this shows you that the more you make concessions to imperialism, the more it is going to demand. The more you make concessions, the more it's going to demand. So the only way out is to radicalize and fight against it. So this is where we see that some of our leaders, of course, our black leaders or African leaders, they are making strategic mistakes, while the whites are gaining more and more. And of course, this is symptomatic, or is symbolic even of what is happening with the African Americans in the United States, and of course also on the continent, because this is a loss for South Africa. These people to gain power, for the whites to gain this amount of power, which is almost 20% of the government, which is 1/5 of the government, when they are just 7%. They are not even up to 10%. They are just 7%. The whites are just 7%, and they have gained 20% of the government. So this is a strategic mistake on the part of the ANC. On the other hand, when you go to the United States, for the Africans, or the so-called African Americans, they have zero influence on what the United States government does. Zero. They have zero influence. So I think that to underestimate what the whites have achieved under the DA in South Africa would be a big mistake. It would be a huge mistake for us. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame, because now to have that background and understanding of the two, then it helps us instead of just going and their status, they're not on the same level. I mean, their struggle, it's a different thing totally, but it gives you a better understanding, because these ones are really now they have the power, and they're talking about expelling the black people that came, still from the continent, from Congo, like we have heard them. There's this 2-minute video by the new Home Affairs Minister. If you can go ahead and listen to it, you will be shocked. It's in less than 24 hours after the cabinet were named. 9 o'clock at night, Ramaphosa named them, and then early morning, this video was, I think immediately he made it, or it was prepared, I don't know. In any case, whereas the African people who are here and they're in power, just appointed, not even as a party, political party, you hear them, coming to Africa and or wherever, whatever positions they have, talking about contaminating African countries, as Linda Thomas sitting in the UN and this AFRICOM general also. Sad, very unfortunate. Now we move forward, and we continue with this discussion. Now, Kwame, there is this question of differentiation and aggregation, as talked about the famous Dr. Claude Anderson. Now, which seems to be the strategy by the whites in South Africa. It seems that's what they are following. And then also, on the other hand, we have inclusion without aggregation, which is the African Americans in the United States. Now, can you elaborate on this?
Yeah. So this what Dr. Claude Anderson, we have Dr. Claude Anderson, who's once a diplomat who served in the Carter administration, and he's an economist at the same time. He came up with this idea that what blacks or Africans in the United States need is not really inclusion, as in when we talk about the Jim Crow segregation in the United States, that the African Americans, during the Jim Crow segregation, what they needed was to continue aggregating their power, because before the Jim Crow segregation, which were laws by the United States, were removed and they attained the Civil Rights Bill was signed in 1964. The 1964 Civil Rights Act. Blacks had gained a certain level of economic power, right? They had their own institutions. They had their own football, leagues. They had their own cinemas. They had their own businesses. But when they were integrated or included into the United States system, included with the whites in everything, and they were integrated within the whites, they are not segregated against. Then they lost all these advantages which they had built up. Okay, so what he says is that what African Americans needed was not really inclusion, but aggregation, to continue to aggregate what they had achieved, what they had. And they had to fight for, what they had to fight for is the right to continue to aggregate and put together their economic power, because they have a purchasing power of up to $1 trillion as the blacks. Okay, if it is an economy, it could be one of the biggest economies in the world. I think it could be the sixth or something, seventh or eighth biggest economy. The blacks in America, if you put all their money together, is around, the purchasing power is around $1 trillion. So that is his thinking. And of course, he was arguing on basing or looking at two schools of thought. You look at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was saying that, okay, we should be integrated into American society. Because remember, Jim Crow segregation was like apartheid. It is like the apartheid which was in the United States, because blacks had their own toilets, they had their own drinking. They were not allowed to go where whites go, where whites sit, the bars where whites drink from. Blacks were not allowed. So that was, Jim Crow segregation, which was just apartheid. It's just another name for apartheid. It's the same thing which was in South Africa with the whites. Now, Dr. King fought to have blacks integrated, to have a society which is integrated. Dr. King, of course, and the civil rights movement, because it is the civil rights movement which built up Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, on the other side, also we had Malcolm X. Malcolm X, and his group to at one point, which is the Nation of Islam, under Elijah Muhammad, they were saying that they should separate themselves from the United States, because the white man is so evil and is so wicked, is so satanic. So they should separate themselves. They should have their own country. United States, they should fight so that the United States should divide the country and give them their own land so that they can run their own country. All right. So Dr. Claude Anderson, his thinking is that we don't need the two of them, but we just need to aggregate so that we can compete in this, capitalist society which we are living in. So that's the, that's the outlook on the side of the African American in the United States, or the Africans in the United States. Now, when you look at South Africa, actually, the whites in South Africa, who are 7.3%, who are just 7.3%, have achieved what Dr. Claude Anderson is talking about. They own almost all the land in South Africa. I saw somebody even put it there and said they own almost 80% of the land. But the figures are showing it, are showing, of course, 72%, but it's almost 80%. They own 7. So it shows you that these people still own the country. They own the mines. All right. They own the mines. And this is what the economic fighters, freedom fighters, the economic freedom fighters of Malema EFF has been saying, that we have to nationalize the mines so that they belong to everyone. The white man is strategizing in all ways, in every way, even with the help of the United States and all of Europe, to see that the Africans don't succeed at that enterprise. They want the whites to remain owning that land. So they have managed now to maneuver. They have managed to maneuver themselves in government while they still own, the economic means, the means of production in South Africa, the land in the country. So they want to continue to subjugate, to put the blacks, who is the labor, because what you need to build an economy is land, labor, and capital. All right? You need land, labor, and capital. Now, if you are controlling the land and you are controlling the capital, then that means what you are remaining with is the labor. So what the white man is fighting for in South Africa, with the help of the United States and his Western brothers, who is the Europeans, what he's fighting for is to retain the land, which is the means of production, and to retain the capital. Of course, they have their capital. They have Wall Street. They have, they have the London Stock Exchange. They have the New York Stock Exchange. Now, what they are fighting so hard is to maintain the blacks in subjugation in South Africa, because the blacks are 81%, and they are still living. The blacks are still living in the shacks. Now, this requires them to employ all kinds of strategies, and that includes dividing them inside there. And you see that there's, I think, Freedom Front Party. There's another party which is called Freedom Front, which speaks almost like the DA, and this party belongs to black people. Yes, so that Freedom Front Party, the guy in Freedom Front Party speaks almost like the DA. He says that the immigrants, the black immigrants, are the problems and stuff like that. They are the ones who are bringing problems. We will deport them.
But by the way, don't forget your points. Sorry, the Freedom Front Plus party is actually the white man party, but they have black people, who talk
yes.
like
yes.
them.
So that is why I'm saying that for you to maintain the 81% or the 82% blacks who are in the country in subjugation, or to maintain them as a source of labor to work your mines and for you to deploy your capital and continue to benefit, you need to use all types of tactics for you to maintain yourself on top like that. And so this requires you to fight so hard to get in government, divide them and get in government. And this is what the Democratic Alliance has achieved in South Africa. And people are downplaying what the DA has achieved in South Africa, but this is a huge step. It's a huge step for a population of 7% to be represented at 20%, to control 20% of the government. This is a huge step. It's a huge achievement. So you can see that this is what they are trying to, this is what they are trying to do as the Democratic Alliance, because they have aggregated themselves internationally. When you are talking about the economic power of the whites across the globe, is already aggregated, because they control the finance of the world. So on the other hand, the African Americans, Africans, even on the continent ourselves, we are not aggregated. Our economy is not aggregated. Even though Africa's economy is equal to that of India, but it is not aggregated, is, splintered here and there, is dispersed all over. So there is no way Africa now can help the African Americans in the United States because of that mistake, that we don't have like maybe one stock exchange or one, two, or three stock exchanges which represent blacks. The whites, they have them. They have the London Stock Exchange. They have the New York Stock Exchange and Wall Street. These, they represent whites. That is why you see that the United States has the ability of helping Israel, because these are whites. They are their brothers. They are whites. Okay, but for us, the blacks, now we cannot, even with this big economy in Africa, which we have, which is almost like the sixth biggest economy in the world, or the seventh biggest economy in the world, with $3.5 trillion, we cannot even go and help the African Americans. Why? Because it is not aggregated. Our economy is not aggregated. It's not looked at as, it's not looked at as a unit. Now, these whites, they have the backing of the United States, which is around $24 trillion, 25 trillion dollars. So you can see that they have a huge advantage. And that's what Dr. Claude Anderson meant when he spoke about aggregation, aggregation and differentiation as versus to inclusion within the white society in the United States, vis-a-vis what we are seeing, the Democratic Alliance and whites have achieved in South Africa.
Just on that point, Kwame, thank you. But that's a very good, you left it on a very good transition now point for my next question. Now, speaking of support for the DA party, is it really fair for us, knowing that the amount of support in kind, in finance that DA is receiving, is that, perhaps the reason why DA is successful in, to reach to that point, also representing only 7% of the population, now having like almost 20% or 19% to be precise of the seats, or the share of power. But when we look at our people, could the reason that for them, like the African Americans or the Africans who live in the United States, not to have such an organized political representation, is it lack of support? What do you think it
Yeah,
is?
definitely.
Lack of support from the continent, lack of support globally from the Black people?
Yeah, so it represents a lot of things. The fact that the whites have achieved this and the African Americans have not achieved much in the United States is symptomatic. I think I will take you back to one quote which Malcolm X said. Malcolm X said that, first of all, it is Nkrumah, I think, who came out and said, no, I think it is Malcolm X who said first when he left Ghana. Because when Malcolm X visited Ghana, there's a new consciousness he gained after talking to Nkrumah. He came and spent some time with Nkrumah when he was touring the African continent. He went and spoke to, at the Organization of African Unity. He visited Algeria. He visited a couple of countries. He visited Egypt, and then he came to Ghana before, and he visited Nigeria also before he went back to the United States. But Malcolm X said that from when he came here, he gained a new dimension. Nkrumah showed him something new, which he had not known. And that is the relationship of the struggle of the Africans in the United States, or the so-called African Americans, and the Africans on the continent, and how that struggle is the same. All right, what you are fighting for in the United States as Black people is the same thing that Africans are fighting for, on the continent, on the mothership, and that is economic control. Because the whites are fighting for economic control and to maintain the blacks as a means of labor, for their continued survival. Actually, Dr. Claude Anderson, I think he wrote even a book. There's a book which he wrote after Power Economics. There's another book he wrote which is called Black Labor, White Wealth, whereby the blacks work and the whites, they gain wealth. All right. So Malcolm X said that unless Africa is great, unless Africa becomes powerful, there's no black man who's going to be respected across the world, anywhere across the world. So the weakness of the Africans in the United States or the African Americans is symptomatic, is illustrative. It illustrates how weak the continent of Africa is. Because if the continent was strong and functioning as it was supposed to, then these people would not be disrespected as they are. Now, this thing or this situation also speaks, it shows even the same, it just illustrates the same thing which is happening in South Africa. That the strength of the DA in South Africa, the fact that they are just 7% and gaining 20% of the government, is a representation of how strong the white race is on the planet. It represents how strong the United States is, because the United States has always been giving them support. Europe has always been giving them support. Whenever something happens or the EFF is talking like this or doing like this, they at one point the ANC spoke about taking back the land from them. And the United States, boom, and Europe, they started, sending threats to the ANC. So our people in the United States, their weakness is an illustration of how weak the African continent or the black people are as a race on the international stage, even geopolitically, whatever it is, but it just represents that Africa is not yet strong, is not where it needs to be, because if it is there, then we will see that reflected in the affairs of our people, and we will be able even to give them support, just like how the whites are giving the whites in South Africa support, so that they are, well represented, or they are even represented above even, proportionally, they are represented above their, population constitution in the country, such as South Africa. Yeah, I think also Nkrumah is the one also who gave this thinking, because it's the one who gave Malcolm X this kind of thinking. Nkrumah said that all people of African descent, whether they are in North America, Caribbean, or any part of the world, are African and belong to the African nation. All right. So it is very clear that what we do here, regardless of whether we know it, whether we fight against each other here in our tribes, and we know it or don't know it, it reflects on the welfare of our people who are living in the United States. And clearly, whether we know it or not, our laziness, our steps, or our fighting against each other on this continent, or our success, whether we know it or not, is reflected on the welfare and the condition of our people across the Atlantic, whether in the Caribbean, in the United States, and how they are living, or even any black people across the world. Their life is reflective of what is happening on the African continent and how much respect the rest of the world gives to the African continent. So, and this is very, very much comparable to how much success the DA has attained in South Africa.
Thank you. What can I say? Had it been that we were well organized, that the African Union have had achieved that political unity, that then the fate of Africans in America would have been different.
Yeah, so the African Union, with the tools it has been given, it has tried. It was able to establish. I think the Africans in the United States were able to lobby the African Union so that they included the sixth region, which represents people of African descent, because we have 5 regions: East, North, West, South, and then the Central, and then we have that region which is outside. We have 5 regions on the continent, and then we have 1 region which is outside the continent. That is, the representation. That's what represents the Africans outside the continent, or people of African descent. So that includes the Caribbean and all the others. It includes the African Americans, the so-called African Americans, whoever, Jamaicans, and what, all these you could think of them as tribes, as another nation. So that's the sixth region. The African Union has been able to do that on that, at that level. It has been able to do that, and it has been, banks like the Afrexim, Africa Import and Export Bank, recently. Its annual meetings were held in Bahamas. So the reason being is that the Afrexim, which is Africa Import and Export Bank, has attempted to include the Africans in the diaspora in its programs. So this was one of those steps taken to see that the Africans on the continent and those across the Atlantic in the diaspora are working together. So you can say that, okay, they have achieved this, but these achievements are not enough. These are not enough. What you need is the unification, total unification of the African continent into a single government. That is what you need.
But
All
perhaps
these,
what I'm saying is, do you think the African, let me rephrase it, the African Americans could have learned something from the African Union had it been that it has that political unification, so that it can push them to get that grip of power share in the United States?
so the African Americans, there's nothing they can do if there's no consensus on the continent. There's nothing they can do, or on a to the United States, in the United States, and unless maybe they come back and organize with the rest of the people who are organizing to bring that consensus. Because you look, we have about 55 states, and you have 55 voices, heads of state, who have this power that the African Union is supposed to have. Because remember, the African Union doesn't make decisions. It is the heads of state of the 55 African countries who make those decisions. Now, these people, they have to be compelled to make that decision. But even themselves, they are divided. You can see that some of them are supporting Ukraine, like people like Nana Addo, people like Ruto. They are supporting Ukraine, and even when they know that this is wrong, what they are doing is wrong, because of how the whites, the imperialist whites, are handling the situation and how they are using divide and conquer, they are able to compel these people to support them. All right. So that becomes a problem. So the African Americans, for now, or the Africans in the diaspora, there's little they can do to gain power in the United States if it is not originating from the African continent. And that means mobilizing with their fellow Pan-African brothers who are on the continent, just like how it happened during independence, the struggle for independence, the slavery, the struggle, for against slavery, that they organized themselves over there. And then Marcus Garvey built a movement. And then people like George Padmore and others, they came and organized with Nkrumah. They organized together with Nkrumah. And those are the periods when the image of the black person actually was very much lifted up. And that's where you heard about black power, black pride, and all this, because the African Americans were frequenting the continent and dialoguing with the Africans on the continent. And people like Malcolm X came to the continent and he spoke at the African Union. And the reason why he spoke at the Organization of African Unity, Malcolm X, is to put the predicament, the affairs of the Africans in front of the African heads of state. Because Malcolm X had seen that they are drifting. The African heads of state have started drifting into social issues. They are being preoccupied with social issues, and they are forgetting the core, the core issues that are supposed to be attended to, which are political. So he wanted to lobby the African heads of state so that they can support the cause of the African Americans or the Africans in the United States at the United Nations. At the United Nations, that was Malcolm X's strategy, and actually, that some people say that's the reason why he was killed. So that's the same thing. What Malcolm X was doing, actually, that is what the Africans in the diaspora are supposed to be doing: to lobby at the African Union and to organize on the ground, in the African continent with those people who want to, overthrow the current neo-colonial system. So that is what I see that, can be done and things can be achieved.
Yeah, I
You are,
wish I could go on with the questions. When you elaborate on things, it brings also, it raises another thing, which is really, really interesting. I learned a lot as I sit behind this screen. I always say, let me go to our audience here and see if they have questions. Did you note something for yourself that somebody said, Kwame? There is
the,
a lot is happening in the chat, so I couldn't keep up. Yeah. The white man in the West is 100% evil. South Africa will do better to remove all Western whites from the land of South Africa. Well, can we play that video for him or her? What is planned ahead? This audience is hoping that South Africa, I mean, we don't want anyone to remove no one, but this is really, xenophobia is now formally coming back to South Africa, officially supported by the government. That's what, because their home affairs, or like immigration, it's another name of immigration. Some call it home affairs, some states, some call it just immigration office. So is from the DA party. DA, by the way, has a very strategical party. Let me just say to you what are the ministerial position for DA. There is Minister of Agriculture, which is the head of the party itself, John Steenhuisen. Minister of Basic Education, Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, and they have also deputies in other offices. Yeah, these are the all analysts agree that DA has a strategic positions. They even asked 2 more. They wanted to make it 8, but that did not happen. Yeah, I think that's all for us. We want to give a shout out. I will quickly welcome Mohammed Musa Ali. You are always here, even before us. Thank you very much for being here. Mangu Kalonji, Anton Dalema, Dimode, who else do I see here? Okay, this is my comment. Child of God, Tariq Ali, Alexander Matthew. Yeah, most of them, they are agreeing with you, and they say they really, yeah, they agree 100% with you, and you are well informed, Kwame. So that's a credit to you. What's it? Melumuzi Hanisi. Okay. Anza Cave Baby, Berserkers, African Kingdom, Yoruba Land. Hello, Yoruba Land. Welcome. You are late today.
Alex, maybe you can show them some of the positions are here
Okay.
on the sharing. You can allow, yeah, so you can allow people to see some of the positions which were allocated to them. Yeah, so this is the so-called seat at the table, whereby the DA, those are the positions it was able to get. Agriculture, home affairs, education, communication, public works. So these are some of the positions which the Democratic Alliance got. But in total, it got 6 positions. I don't know
Yeah.
why they have indicated only 5 here, but they got 6.
Environment is missing, or is it with, or fishery something? Yeah.
Yeah.
But It's fun. Yeah, thank you very much. I think we will just end it here. Maybe, not to make it long. Kevin Aka, Mr. Welcome. Also, I see you. He is or she is asking, have you read the books by Brenda Gale Plummer entitled Rising Wind and Search of Power? I haven't.
I think no, I haven't also, so I'll take note of that.
Yeah.
Who is that? Mahlet, can you send me that text? Maybe you can copy it for me and send it to me in text. I want to read them. I'll try and
Okay.
read those books. Yeah, if
Okay.
you can send it to me via text, I'll be happy to check them out.
Okay. Nay.
Brenda Guy, Clemmer, that the rising wind and search for power. And in search for power. Okay,
All
that's
right.
beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Uh, Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all for being here, for trusting us, for engaging, for commenting, for giving us your support. We don't take it for granted. Each and every one of you, it means a lot for us. Continue like that, because you are the reason for us to be here every day. And yeah, share the video with others. Do not keep it just for you. It's an information. So we are here to learn from each other. So share the video as much as possible. That way you can make, even you inform one person, that's a big thing. If you want to help us further, go ahead to our description section and you can donate to our PayPal account. I put also the link here in the chat section. Go ahead and subscribe to Africa Reimagine, that's Kwame's channel as well. We try to support each other and build, as we build our channels, which is, the same goal, so that we will be able to inform using this little platform that we have. So make sure you subscribe to that. And yeah, we will see you on the next one tomorrow. You should not miss it. We're gonna talk about Kenya's debt, to be specific. You want to say a few words? Don't spoil it.
No, so I just want to appreciate everyone. Definitely, we appreciate everyone who has been on the channel. This has been a very important topic because we say that our channel doesn't really only represent the Africans on the continent, but it represents also, the Africans across the Atlantic, Africans in the diaspora. So all Africans, anywhere where they are, for us, they are very dear to our hearts. That is why you should invite other people, especially in the diaspora, also to tune in into the channel, to subscribe to the channel. And like Mahlet has said, tomorrow we are discussing Kenya's date. There's this talk which has been going on about Kenya's date, and the United States came out to deny that it's not the one indebting Kenya, and it pointed to China. And of course, the United States also has been saying that Africa is indebted to China. The claim is that China is burdening Africa with debt. So tomorrow we are going to look at Kenya's debt. What is it really, and who is burdening Kenya with this huge debt? So, with those few words, I want to thank everyone who has been paying attention to the channel. If you have been watching, make sure you like before you go, and also invite other people to subscribe, and also to enjoy this important. Share this video with other people, because many people want to enjoy some of this information. They want to be informed with this information, because the more you share it, it means that we are speeding up the process of the liberation of our people, because we are not only here where we are talking on a platform, but we are doing a lot of works even on the ground as organizers. Okay, so this is very important, so that you share it and help other people to come to this consciousness, the level of consciousness we need them, so that this will speed up the process of liberation of our people. When we liberate Africa, we liberate everyone, every black person across the planet. So with that, once again, I want to thank you, everyone who has been watching and supporting Connect Africa. Continue to do so. We do appreciate you very much. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
myself. Thank you, Kwame, also. So we will see each other tomorrow again. It's a bye-bye from us. Bye.